this will be taped and then be on the website here and probably within a week. So our guest this evening has been in the kind of HR business for a long time. Fred and I got a chance to spend some time together at a Bronco game a couple weeks ago. Thanks, and it was awesome. And so he's been involved in a lot of organizations in Denver, and he's a huge skier, and he's a great guy. And so the thing that we tried to do in this particular, kind of fireside chat, is to get some people that help with all aspects of the business. And we've had people as CTOs, and CEOs, and CFOs, that kind of stuff, and all that stuff doesn't run unless you have people. So I think it's important to get a perspective of kind of the whole people side of the business. So without any further ado, I'd like to introduce Fred Holt. Thanks, man.
Well, where else can you get a welcome like that in a cold beer?
Cold beer, yeah.
Gotta make this a habit.
We're good.
Thanks for having me.
Hey, no worries. Appreciate it. So, we talked a little bit when we first met and everything else, and I'll kind of go with the same mantra story that I typically do. So what I do at these things is really kind of get an idea of people to get to know you, and the best way to do that is talk about kind of where you came from, kind of where you grew up, that kind of business, and just kind of give us a little overview of that, and we'll kind of move on from there.
Okay, sure. So I grew up in northern Michigan, right in the Canadian border, a little town of 15,000 people. Hockey town, USA, literally. Detroit Red Wings used to have summer camp there. And so I grew up in a family with 5 siblings, 6 including me. Grew up in tough winters and grew up skiing and loving that. And moved to Colorado in 1975, dating myself, to be a ski bum. So I really didn't have any ambitions to do anything other than ski when I was 18 years old. So after a couple of years being up at Copper Mountain and being in the ski school up there and doing dishes part-time and working next to 30-year-old potheads, I thought, well, maybe the skiing thing is really great, but it gets hard to look in the mirror when you're 20, now what am I doing, right? So I went back to Michigan for 6 years, went back to school and got an undergrad in psychology and sociology, and really wanted to be a clinical psychologist, and worked for a part-time during college for a community mental health center working with severely mentally ill adults. When the big institutions were, kind of the one flew over the cuckoo's nest kind of places, we're sort of shutting those places down. And so I worked and met my wife, who was my boss.
Nice deal.
Yeah, still is. So kind of halfway through that, I thought, this isn't really what I thought it was and what I wanted to do. And then I felt kind of stuck. So what do I do now? I knew I wanted to get at least a master's degree, and it's not clinical psych. So what's it going to be? And I found this thing called industrial organizational IO psychology, and thought, this is about people, but it's a world of work. So it's been a great ride for me. I came right back out to Colorado when I graduated, and have worked since primarily in VPHR roles for tech, high growth companies. So it's been a good ride.
So talk about some of the companies you work for here in Denver that we would probably be familiar with.
Well, some you might not, because the audience is a little younger here. But I think the first corporate role, I started in consulting right away with a boutique firm in Lakewood. But there's a company called Cadnetics that had just gone public that I worked for. It was a great company, software company, computer-aided design and computer-aided engineering workstations. And that was an interesting time that I was growing quickly. I joined right after the IPO, but it kept growing, and then we were acquired by a Bay Area company, competitor, which ended in a Chapter 11, which then ended up a crisis management firm coming in and managing us through the Chapter 11, and then we were purchased by Intergraph. So I went all through that. Part of it I was individual contributor, but the bulk of it I was a director and led the HR function for that company. It was an interesting ride. I learned a lot about what to do and what not to do. Some of you may know companies like Rally Software or Clear Technology or Condo Technology. The pattern here is that a lot of boulder-based companies some don't go anywhere, you know their name, they try hard and don't make it. And then some get acquired as a typical kind of path. Not too many rallies that end up with an IPO.
An IPO,
acquired.
yeah.
But, yeah.
So tell us a little bit about the one that got acquired by Integrap. About, well, first of all, let's kind of step back a little. One of the things is that, as we all know, is that you start a company, whatever, and you're doing something, you want to get good people, and you kind of have this tendency, at least, to, well, I'm just going to hire my friends, you know, my brother, my neighbor, you know, whatever. I mean, there's pros and cons, and
Yeah.
I'm sure you can enlighten us a little more on some of those. But what are, if you're starting up and you want to be able to identify good people, what's a good way to kind of do that? I mean, what's a good starting point? How do you go about doing that?
Well, I think, and I know there's a couple of people in this room that work in that space as well, but you know, particularly at the senior level, if we're talking about startups, you know, there's nothing more critical than getting the right people in the right seats, and not just skill sets. That's important, but it's probably not as important as are we culturally aligned. Do we want the same things? Do we have the same visions? Do we have the same values? Because those are critical for success. And you know, I've seen a lot in my career of brilliant people with tremendous technical skill sets and otherwise that don't fit in an organization, or they don't fit with that particular team. So I think the best advice is take your time getting to know, particularly if it's early on in some of those key roles that you're filling. So go slow, take your time, and make sure the fit is there, and worry a lot more than just, you know, is this person a great CTO or CFO or, you know,
What do you think are the key components to let's just take a tech startup, for example.
Yeah.
Who are the key players at kind of the management level, if you will? And then what would be kind of the next phase, right, in growth?
I think it depends a little bit on the business, Tony, but if it's a technology-oriented company where I've spent most of my time, you know, early on, it's usually those technical skill sets, right?
Right.
It's the software, if it's got a hardware component, product, you know, what are we going to build? What does the market need? You know, what's going to be successful? And then it starts getting fleshed out from there. So, you know, pretty frequently you see a finance person come in, a CFO that can help.
Do you think that needs to be early on, a finance person? Or do you think that's later down the road, or is it? I mean, what's been your experience? I've seen people...
it's sort of been all over, and when I've come in, you know, it's been a little bit later than the very early seed stuff and Series A stuff. So it's now we've got something, and we're going to scale and we're going to grow. And that's usually when I've come in. But I think, you know, those positions are so key and so pivotal to early success. And sometimes companies go very, very fast. They raise a lot of money really early on. And so then they have to get that infrastructure built early, as opposed to somebody who's more bootstrapping, maybe just, you know, angel money early, and they can't go as fast. And you know, they're more bootstrapping and they go a little slower. But you've got to eventually get that full complete team, which is, you know, not just the tech positions, but finance, and marketing, and sales, and HR, to really, you know, flesh it out and have a fully functioning, capable team that can scale.
So how do you define some of those roles? So say, for example, I just got done talking with a friend of mine. He's like, hey, I want to start this thing. You've done some of this stuff before. You know, what did you do, and how did you define roles? How did you define kind of a job description or whatever? And I was like, well, you know, it's, you know, I stole it. It's like, you know, I just went and grabbed it from someplace and said, does this fit with what we're doing? But in essence, it's how do you translate that into words, if you will? But then how do you have that conversation with somebody to know that they're actually part of that fit?
Well, I'm a big believer in not reinventing the wheel, so a lot of people have done a lot of good things already you can build on and steal from.
Yep.
And I do that a lot. There's a lot of smart people out there that have kind of been down the path before. But if what you're asking is, you know, what do I need in this organization? It's all over the place. And what you need today might be different than what you need tomorrow as you grow. And you know, you want to have some kind of planning in place that says, hey, we have a goal, an objective, and a vision, you know, about how we're going to get there. But then the world changes, right? So, I mean, we probably all know a lot of early stage companies that start out doing one thing, and the market shifts or the idea changes and they end up doing something kind of different. So it's the ability to be kind of adaptive, and hopefully you have, folks on the team that are flexible and adaptable, that skill sets can.
How do you identify somebody like that? And what are some of the key features, if you will, or nuances about somebody that you know is like, wow, that person's, he's like Gumby, he's pretty flexible, or he's too stiff, or she's too stiff.
I think in really early stage companies, we all wear a ton of hats.
Yeah.
Right? So, you really don't get to go deep on a lot, early at least, right? And then some folks are really good in wearing a lot of hats and getting things, this far, and then they run out of steam, right? Because they are wide and not deep. And then, so you have to keep looking at the organization and what are the needs and how do we get the right talent on board to meet, whatever the new challenges and demands are. I think it's not uncommon to be able to stick with an idea and a path, but I think it still tweaks and changes and morphs, and you end up doing a little bit different things.
What do you think in an organization, whether it's a startup or even after they got going, is the key person that helps define those roles? Is it the CEO, is it the management team, or is it just that next level down?
Yeah, I think it's usually the founder, CEO, and then if you've got some venture back there, they'll be very supportive and help you in terms of the.
Have you found that to be the case in the stuff you did? They're having the investors help with that?
Yeah, and I think they can be very helpful. We've had some of the VCs on speaking before, and I think they can be a lot of value in saying, here's based on our experience at this level of growth, what you need. And sometimes they can actually, be good with introductions as well. So and help you flesh that out. So, but part of it is really about finding the right talent, but then it's also building an organization that, really gets the best out of people. It's about healthy organizations and healthy cultures, and passion, and how many people here have worked for a dysfunctional company or dysfunctional boss?
Me.
We all have.
We all have.
And how does that feel?
Everybody raised their hand. By the way.
And I'm passionate about, trying to make sure that piece of the business is done. That's what I'm on about. So the bulk of my career was, in early to mid stage in growing organizations. And I think, as you know, I started a business that's really going downstream, helping really, emerging growth tech companies that really want to get the people thing right. So I started a business to help that, and it's important. You can change the world. How did you go home? How did you folks that raised your hand, which I think was everybody, when you go home, how do you feel? Are you kicking the dog? Are you good to your significant other? Are you happy you're not? And I think getting the healthy organization correct is a big piece, and it's probably the best competitive advantage.
So how would you define a healthy organization? What are some of the things that you can do to help them do that? Is it the ping pong tables and the beer, or what is that? What are some of those?
Yeah, there's a lot more science in this kind of human capital area than a lot of people believe, I think. And I think organizations need a couple of things to be successful. They need to be smart. They need to have good technology, they need good strategy, and good marketing, and good finance. But that's not enough. They need to be healthy, and they need to have a cohesive team. That's probably the first key underpinning, right? A team that trusts each other. They're vulnerable. They know how to say I'm sorry. They know how to kind of put themselves out there. So that's part of the key.
Empathy.
To your early, yes. The ability to say, I screwed up, sorry. Or I'm not good at this. I'm not very good at this. Can you do this? Or is there somebody else who can do it because I'm afraid I'm not going to do a good job? That's the very start of a healthy organization.
Those are great. So having that is a wonderful thing. So how do you keep that going with in organizations that may look at that as being somewhat of a fault, if you will? Like, I can't have a fault. I'm not going to. Oh, geez, I'm not going to ask. Because I may look at, you know what I mean?
Yeah, it's great to start from the beginning and set what those guideposts are for the organization. What are the values? That we're going to. What are the behaviors that we're going to hold as constant, no matter where we go as a business, right? These are the things that guide us. It's the North Star about how we're going to behave. Good. And if you get those established and stick with them and live with them, you're going to be a lot more successful and a lot healthier. And I paraphrase from Patrick Lencioni's work a lot, who's a big guru in this space. Wrote a book called The Advantage, and it's all about this organization, because most companies are smart. Most companies aren't dumb. You know, how many dumb companies do you know that they just don't have the smarts to kind of figure stuff out? Not all, but most of them aren't. What happens is, you know, with these smart tech folks is that their world isn't really on this, you know, softer side of a healthy organization. And so they can see it's important, but they tend to gravitate back towards the marketing and the sales and the product. But really, there's so much room on the other side of making sure it's a healthy organization. And you can't be successful really without it. And I don't want to tell you horror stories, and some are with clients, but it gets in the way a lot. And you've all seen it. Everybody raised their hand, and we all know what that looks and feels like. And it's not fun, and it doesn't work. And it's not a good way to spend your day, and it's not a key to success.
So what are some key things that people can do to help with that, not only as an employee, but as a manager or owner or whatever?
Yeah, it's a good question. And I think, you know, the best way you can help as entrepreneurs and leaders, you're in a role where you have, you know, the ability to have a little bit more impact. But, you know, even inside an organization, you can try to do those things in your work group, right? You can try to foster trust and have clarity around what you're trying to do, and build a culture that's positive and supportive and rewarding inside your little work group. And try really hard with that. And if you can't, because the organization doesn't support it, then I would say it's time for the jockey to get a new horse that you can win on.
Right. Can you give us some concrete examples of what those would be? Some techniques or
you know, I think part
of the trade, if you will.
You know, there's some good assessment stuff out there that you can start with, you know, as a measurement point that says how well are we aligned as a team, right? And some of those are free, and some of those aren't very expensive. I'll put a plug in for a local Boulder company called Roundpeg that worries about culture, how to measure it, how to improve it, you know, aspirational maybe, how do we get towards it.
Right.
And so there's those kinds of assessments and tools that, you know, are very helpful. And I think part of it is just people common sense. We all know what we like. People are, you know, one of the things I learned very early in my undergrad psych degree was, you know, if you want to understand people, look at yourself, because we're all a lot more alike than we're different, right? And so the things that drives me are probably the same things that drive you. And I think we all want those, you know, we want to be heard, we want to feel like what we're doing matters, we want to know how what we do contributes to the overall goal of the organization, right? And, you know, and we want to feel like we're measured, and we know how we're being successful and how we're going to be measured. And some companies do all those things really well, and some are really not very good at all. And it leads to a kind of a low morale, high turnover sort of situation, which is a killer for, you know, success.
So do you think in a start, like I was going back to this friend of mine who we had this conversation with, and he was talking about, you know, agreements and setting expectations, and, you know, basically putting together plans with people that outline, if you will, I think we said kind of some of the behaviors. But do you find that to be something that needs to be documented in a way with individuals, and, you know, say, hey, this is what we're doing, and kind of more of a, I would say formalized, but more of a formalized method, as opposed to just saying, hey, we're all going to hold hands.
I haven't seen a lot of let's codify all this, particularly in the early stages. Where I have seen it be successful is when things go off the rails, or maybe there's an acquisition situation, and there's kind of two disparate teams, nobody's getting along, fighting, and say, all right, let's go somewhere offsite and figure out how we're going to behave, how we're going to work together, and what are the common objectives, and can we get there together, and what's getting in the way.
Right.
But I think early on that, to me, you know, maybe a little overkill. I mean, it's always good to have, you know, agreements. I know I was at a Denver startup week event last year with some attorneys there, and one of the key things that kills a startup, I remember hearing from one of the firms, their law firms, was, you know, not having agreements in place around how we're going to work together as a team, and what I get and what you get. So I don't want to say that kind of stuff isn't important, because I believe it is. You know, so what's my ownership, what's yours, what's your role, what's mine. But outside of, you know, codifying how we behave together, I think values is a great place to start. But I think going a lot deeper than that, in my opinion, probably isn't terribly critical or crucial really early on. I think just spending the time with that person, And a lot of startups, I think, are people that already know each other and work together. So they've kind of passed that trap, and that works really well too, because they've had that shared experience and time together and work as a team.
So going back to we had talked earlier about the culture thing. I've asked many different folks that I've had the opportunity to sit down and have conversations with about how they define culture. How do you define company culture?
Yeah, I think at its lowest level, it's how things get done around here. What gets rewarded, what gets punished, what gets ignored. It's sort of that shared system of beliefs. But at the base level, it's how do we work here? How do we get things done? And every organization is kind of different. There are attributes like high collaboration, low collaboration, right? Team versus individual. There's lots of different attributes to that.
Are you a proponent of making that very visible in the organization, both internally and externally?
Yeah, I am. I think it's one of the cornerstones of good, starting from the get-go, healthy organizations that take this stuff seriously from the beginning, before they have trouble, before they, run off the rails, because they don't have any kind of guiding principles.
Right.
And there's sleazy companies out there that run into trouble and people leave, and there's companies that are pillars of doing things the right way.
What are some of the good ones that you think that you've been involved with, or no?
Yeah, well, and it's been a while because it was pretty early on at Rally, but Rally was a great company, and they really cared about people, they cared about culture, they paid a lot of attention to it, and they lived it every single day. They lived values every single day. And I mean, all of us have seen, most companies of any size have values, but whether they're lived, shared, integrated, not so much.
The ones that, like, big companies that you can think of that, just off the top of your head, maybe that you can look at and say, yeah, I think that company is doing the right thing when it comes to with their people. It doesn't have to be here in Colorado, but
the Zappos story has been pretty successful. And for anybody that wants to attend an event tomorrow, I'll put a plug in.
I was going to give you over. Thank
you.
Go ahead.
Yeah. So Tony's company Zappos, they spun off a company called Delivering Happiness, and they created a company that came out of that book and a consulting practice. And we're having one of their folks speak next week at a group I'm involved in.
It's on Monday, right?
It's on Monday in the morning at DU. If anybody's interested, let me know and I can send you a link, or you can send it to your email list or whatever. But it's all about kind of the science of happiness and the ROI on that, because a lot of people look at that soft, fuzzy stuff.
Well, that's what's
deal
going
with
to
it,
right?
Yeah. There's a preponderance of data out there collected over years. There's a lot of high value management science around what engaged workforce means, how that impacts turnover, how it impacts willingness to give discretionary effort. There's one stat out there that's pretty well founded that says that the difference between a highly disengaged employee, those are kind of those companies that when you raised your hand like, this sucks, I don't want to be here, you're probably highly disengaged, at least not for a while before you find the next thing that might work better for you, to highly engaged. And the level of discretionary effort is shown to be about 57% more from a non-engaged to a highly engaged employee. So think of that. Think about if you had the bulk of your workforce that was highly engaged, that's delivering 57% more discretionary effort, meaning they're going to do what they need to do. They want to win. They want to deliver good results. They want their performance to be measured. They want to help the organization succeed. You can go a long way with that, and that's what healthy organizations have. Is they're up on that curve. The turnover is really low. Turnover is a wonderful stat for measuring how healthy an organization is. And things, change a little bit. I saw some research to Towers Watson a few years ago that said the average college graduate today will have 17 jobs by the time they're 40. So it's a little different than when you and I were coming up.
I think I pretty much hit that by That happened way after.
But every year you can reduce that and keep people a little bit longer and keep them happy and engaged. And we know they're going to go, and our job is to help mentor them and have a good experience, so they're really connected and plugged in. Is really good stuff, right? and it just ka-ching to the bottom line.
Right.
So it is an important business driver, and my mission is this is the world I live in.
Right.
I'm trying to work with emerging growth companies and say, let's focus on some of this stuff, some of this healthy organization stuff.
Do you find it useful for organizations to use, I think you mentioned just a second ago, mentors, and whether that's internal or external? Do you find that to be a good way to do that? Would you recommend for organizations to use somebody from the outside and maybe get a different perspective? Or
I think you could do it either way. I think mentorship is a great way. And I think mentors can also learn from the mentee, especially old guys like me. So I'm just going to take on a mentee that I'm kind of excited about, because I'm sure I'll learn just as much as I teach. But I think in particularly in the knowledge worker environment, the kind of space that I hang out in, where average salaries are 90, 100K. People want careers. They want to do more than just punch the clock and go home. That's fine too. There's nothing wrong with that. But if you've chosen a career more than a job, then you want to be successful, and the people that are really good want to learn and they want to grow, and to provide them with those opportunities, other ways to do that other than just a mentor. But I think that's a great way, and I think it's a really intimate way to share, and there's great interaction between people there, and both learn from it. So I think it's an awesome way.
So what do you think about performance appraisals? I mean, I know that.
Well, let's ask the audience, how many people like performance appraisals? Think they work well?
I think they're crazy, personally. But what do you?
It's kind of a broken system.
People are doing things a lot different.
They are. There's some new tools out there some online stuff that can kind of help. That instead of doing that annual dreaded performance appraisal that managers hate, you got to chase them, and eventually I've been in organizations where you can't even get the freaking managers to do them. So it's like, you can't get your raise until all of your people are reviewed. Right. And if you're only sitting down once a year to tell somebody how they're doing, that's not a very good thing, right? Yeah. Those should never be surprises. But HR folks do those things because it's better than nothing.
Yeah.
It's not a lot better than nothing, but at least you can guarantee at one time, the employee has to sit down with the manager. There's much better ways to do that. There's, some good online tools now that first you break it into very small, components. Right. And you put in some mentoring there as well, right? So part of, I think, what millennials particularly want now is to really be growing, right? We threw away a long time ago the old, work relationship that said, I'll trade my loyalty for job security. That went away a long time ago. Right? So the world really changed. And so the younger generation too, they want lots of different experiences.
Right.
And I think providing them with mentorship. One of the guys that founded LinkedIn, I believe, wrote a book that I think is kind of cool, whose name now is going to escape me, out in the Bay Area, where they started, they looked at their employees, and that old employment relationship doesn't work anymore. It's very old now, hasn't worked in a long time. So we know that, it's called the Alliance, that employees want to get good experience. They're probably 28 years old. I'm not going to retire in this organization, right? The odds are extremely slim that's ever going to happen. So this book, the Alliance, talks about, uses sort of this military term called tour of duty. And it says, well, let's get people to sign up. It's not legally binding, but the manager and the employee have a relationship that says, what do you want from me? What do you want to get out of your experience here? I know you're not going to retire here, but what do you want to get? Because I want to work your ass off, and I have things I need to accomplish. But let's see if we're aligned here, and let's put some stuff down. Whether you sign up for 2 years or 3 years or whatever the case, and let's get you there, right? As long as it's going to help the organization as well, I'm sure we can find a way to get you what you want in your resume and get your experience.
So do you think that that's part of it? That's saying, acknowledging right up front, we know you're not going to stay here forever?
Yeah, because I think everybody plays the game right now and says, no, I'll be here forever as an employee, because that's what I'm supposed to say. And as the employee, you go, oh yeah.
So you can ask that question, like, well, what do you want? And you tell them this, and they're like, oh yeah, we're going to be here for,
it's just not reality.
Well,
And I think
no,
we
it's
just,
not.
the employer
Okay.
fools the employee and vice
Yep.
versa. So
Yep.
with these guys, I said, look,
Yeah, that's
let's just be
true.
transparent.
Yeah.
Yeah. And let's get you what you want, and then you can sign up for another tour
Right.
if you still want to be here. If you don't, hey, we had a great time, and you've learned a lot. I got a lot out of you. The organization prospered, and Godspeed. We'll see each other again maybe sometime. So I think that's the more healthy, approach.
Mark Andrews.
Reid Hoffman
Reid Hoffman
was the author.
Kind of iterative approach, basically, more or less, right?
Yeah, I mean, sign up for, it can be different in different organizations, but it's a document the manager signs, and I like it. I think it makes a lot of sense in today's world. So.
At any organization, no matter where they're at, probably, right? As far as their
Yeah, I think it works a lot better in a knowledge worker kind of environment, where you have a career versus a job, but even in some of those jobs, I think it could be
Right.
effective.
Right.
So it's the stuff I get excited about that helps organizations.
Can you mirror that with Holacracy, Tony Hsieh?
So holacracy? Yes. Tony Hsieh, yes.
The jury's out on that tonight.
Yes, it is.
And I'm actually leading this program that's being the speaker in next Monday, Sonny Grosso, and I'm sure there'll be a question because it's like, wow, that's a little different. I don't know. I don't know what the answer to that is. It was kind of surprising to me. Yeah. They had a 30%, I believe, turnover after that. So I don't know what that means. That's kind of interesting.
Well, a lot of interesting changes going on in the working world. I mean, I know from my own experience, it's incredibly different.
Yeah, it is.
And you see, so one of the things I want to ask you is, we see a lot of organizations that have been around for a while, and they're trying to do this reinvent themselves, right? So they're starting startups within internal. I know, like Coca-Cola's doing it, John Deere's doing it. There's a bunch of different companies. What's your thoughts on that? Do you think that that's a viable approach? Do you think it's because it's a fad? Do you think what do you think, at least in your own opinion? Is it worth it? Is it not? Is it too monumental for some of these organizations?
So the caveat is I don't have a clue really. I think organizations have life cycles,
Yeah.
that they go through, and I don't know what the real stat is. I heard a year or two ago that surprised the heck out of me. What is the average lifespan of a U.S.-based company? And it's not that long.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it really isn't. Companies come and they go, and it's not common to see, an IBM, that sticks around that long, or a John Deere. That's not the norm. So I think organizations go through, innovation and stagnation, and they got to do something to shake it up. And on the surface, I think it makes sense to try to get innovative, but they're buried inside this giant bureaucracy.
Right.
I was with a company that we ultimately sold to IBM Tivoli, and the difference between a 600-person organization and an IBM is like a different planet, and the difference between a 50-person startup and a 600-person organization is a different planet. So they require different skill sets and different things, and some people their skill sets are suited to navigating these very large bureaucratic organizations.
Right.
And some are much better suited for fast-moving, agile, adaptive, let's wear shorts and flip-flops and bring the dogs kind of organizations. I don't know if these are right or wrong. I think it's more fun than just where I spend my
As long as there's
life.
skiing involved there.
Yeah, exactly. Right.
So let's reverse it. We talked about companies doing stuff for employees. What do you think are some of the key things that, as an employee, coming on, looking for a different company or whatever, or being involved, what do you think some of the things that they need to look at to decipher whether that organization is the right fit for them? What's a good way to do that? Or some things you could...
Yeah, and I think, the first part of that question is how many options do people have, right? So if we're talking about in-demand skill sets everybody's fighting over, like one of my clients do, then, the good folks have lots of opportunities. They're getting calls all the time. So I think it's trying to, figure out how do they work, right? What are their values? What are my values? What are their work styles? What's my work style? What does it feel like when you walk in there? I mean, we talked a little bit about culture and kind of how you define that. It's still a little amorphous for a lot of people, but you know it when you see it. Right? You walk into a company and you know what that feels like. Is it super quiet, nobody talks, or as there's stuff flying around and people are engaged and smiling and there's a lot of energy. You can just feel it, right? So I think part of it is, I have a son that's graduating with an IT degree here in a couple of months, and he's flipped pizza for a while, and he's never really had a professional job, and he's a little bit older student because he pooched at the same time. But I'm really proud of you, Fred. You got it now.
This is on tape.
But he's doing great, and I'm really proud of him. And that's what he's starting. I'm trying to help him with, and find other people that can help him too, to pick, because it's important, right? Who you work with. I mean, we spend so much time at work, right? And so much of our identity and our self-esteem, and who we are, comes from our jobs. And it's really important to try to get that as right as you can. So, again, I think the more time you can spend, the better. It's always great to look at like the glass doors and get comments and that kind of stuff. Go out for a beer with somebody that works there. And a lot of these companies will do that, right? I mean, if they want you, they'll spend the time and the energy to take the time to make sure that you're a fit. Because most people don't fail because it's a bad skill fit. They fail because it's a bad culture fit. They just do not fit with the values and behaviors of the organization. And it doesn't necessarily mean one's right or wrong. It's just, it's not right for me. That's not how I'm wired, and what I value is different than what you do. So I think, take time. In some disciplines, you may not have 20 choices where,
right.
You have the luxury of doing that, but in some you do. In the environment that we're in here, that tends to be more the case, where good people have options. And, who's the boss, right? Who's the team? Can you go out with the team? And a lot of the interviewing these days kind of involves the whole team. So you get to know and they get to know you, how you're going to fit in. You have to have the skills too. You have to have the hard skills. If it's a mobile apps, coder, they got to know that stuff. But how are you going to work with us? Do we want you on the team? I think years ago Google had a great interview question, around would you want to be stuck at an airport with this person? And you can't answer, yeah, no problem. And
Depends on if they have food or not. This is my opinion. Good food. Good. The question I have, and then I'm going to open it up to the group, is you've been here in Denver for quite a long time, and I just want to get your perspective on where you think the growth here is going. Do you think it's sustainable? Do you think if it isn't or is, what do you think we need, at least here in the Denver metro area, to kind of keep this thing rolling like it is right now? Because it seems some days like it's just going so fast that you can't even see it.
yeah.
But there's always that fear that it's just going to go. I mean, what are some of the things that you think need to be put in place?
I think keep on keeping on. I think it's really vibrant. I think it's very exciting. I think it's some great organizations, like our sponsors here, and the shared workplaces and the Techstars of the world and Boomtowns that are extremely supportive, that keep spawning, these entrepreneurs and giving the skill sets and the support really that entrepreneurs need. I think there's a lot that's happening really well. I mean, I don't think I'm smart enough to just talk about course corrections. I really like what we're doing. I think it's sustainable. I don't see anytime soon, and I think it's working really well. It's great. I've spent a lot of time in Boulder. Spent a lot of time in the Bay Area because, as I said, the patterns a lot of times Boulder area companies are acquired, and frequently they're acquired by Bay Area companies. But it's really great to see Denver and the Lodo area just really churning out a lot of great, entrepreneurs and companies and great ideas. So I think there's a real infrastructure here that is very supportive and is doing a great job. Let's keep going. I think it's really good.
So I know we've had an opportunity to talk with a lot of folks that are doing well in a startup, and the folks that have been able to talk with, and I think it's good things on the horizon still.
Yeah.
I still think there's this element of getting more dollars into the space, but that's a continual thing, I think. But,
yeah, I think that's always an issue.
Keep that ball rolling. Anyway. Good. Well, I'm going to open up the floor if that's okay. I mean, if you have some questions from Brett, please do. Yes.
How often do you come across companies that maybe don't know what their culture is yet, maybe a small or new company, and what are some of the best exercises that you would ask them to go through to help define that culture?
Yeah, that's a great question. How many companies aren't aware of their cultures or don't really know how to approach it? I think a lot aren't really good at defining or even thinking about it. It's just something that, and part of that's true, the culture is part of what happens, right? It happens bottom up and it happens top down. So I think the early folks in, the founders, have a big impact on establishing the culture, but it also comes from bottom up. And it's in my view, in the world I live in, it's not as intentional as it probably should be and could be. And again, I think there's tools out there to look at and assess it and kind of look at it kind of critically in a disciplined way. And again, there's great tools. There's others, but Round Peg is in my backyard, and I like those guys. And it's a great way to get some discipline around it and to get some. And it can be aspirational, right? It's not necessarily where we are today, but where we want to get to, and then how do we get there on purpose, right? So it's a very intentional kind of approach versus it's just going to happen. Sometimes, it can happen. Okay, you have people that are starting an organization and hire the right people, and it all kind of comes together. I mean, I've certainly seen that work, but I think your odds are better if you take it very seriously and you're very intentional about it. And it's not super expensive to use some of these tools and take a hard look at it.
Where do you find those types of tools? Where's a good place to?
I feel like I'm an ad for roundpeg.com, but I like those guys. I like what they're doing, and they're in our backyard, and they work with a lot of local companies. So we were just at Denver Startup, at a pretty well attended event on culture, which I was glad to see. Not always sure how kind of the HR stuff sometimes gets attended, but I think there's a lot of interest in it. It's becoming more and more important, and I think the millennials are really interested in this work-life balance issue, and I guess the new term is work-life integration, because it can all happen at the same time sometimes. But
it's not a balance anymore.
It's more of an integration. The phone never stops ringing, and email. And,
I think AJ was next.
Sure. Fred, I'm AJ. I have a 2.5-part question.
Okay.
Half part is Summit HR Solutions. You didn't really tell us if this is a single person company or what you do. And then if you could do that,
Sure.
I can give you part
Okay.
2.
Okay, I'll take one at a time.
All right.
So Summit HR Solutions is a new company I founded just about 2 years ago. So I'm also an entrepreneur and a startup guy. So I like this community. I have a partner in Seattle, Shannon Swift, that we're working together. I have one person on my team here and a couple in the wings as the business grows, and it's growing. And we have aspirations and designs to open up in other geographies. Probably the first will be the Bay Area. I have one client there now, and there's so much going on in the tech space, and I think it's underserved. And my model is more about being on site. I'm a business guy with an HR toolkit, and our model is to. I don't think you could be really plugged in and strategic if you don't know the business and the people. So we're for companies that are primarily emerging growth tech companies. That's where the experience is. That's where the fun is. That's who's funded and can pay the bills. But it's learning the business, learning the team. It's for companies that want strategic HR, but they don't need and they can't afford a senior guy like me. So it's on a part-time basis. We have some other products, HR in a box for really small companies. You get phone and email support and access a bunch of content online, best practices stuff. And then we have some leadership stuff that is very intentional, very affordable, very powerful. Wouldn't work for IBM, but it's really good for smaller companies where you have a lot of folks that have never been in management and leadership positions before. So we have some stuff there that we do as well. Thanks for asking.
All right, great. Part 2 and 3 are really, or 1 and 2 are, given, you just touched on it a little bit, that by 2014, 50% of the workforce was millennial driven. And we're really less than 9 years away, 2024, 25, when 75% of the workforce will be millennial based, as well as Gen Z, who's now entering the workforce and coming in. How do you see both tech companies, and I see a lot of dropouts in both young tech companies as well as enterprise companies addressing the retention, the onboarding process, the pre and those first 6 months. When you have a core group of people who are very creative and entrepreneurial, not so much coddling them and patting them on the back, but just tell me how I'm doing. How am I moving the ball forward?
Yeah.
How am I creating this week and then this next week? How do I keep doing that? How am I a part of the company and helping our business unit grow? How are you codifying that from the millennial point of view, the retention? Otherwise I go, okay, I'm done, and the 1 year is up, or even the 2 years might be up. And the second part of that is plugging all that in, looking at our group here, how are companies addressing that component within a diversity aspect, both from an ethnicity as well as women's issues, where women are the numbers are off the charts in terms of how many are so successful, but how many are not kept. They're not invited to come up into a higher level.
Wow, that is a really big question.
Same space, but two different aspects.
You know, I guess I would first say, you know, on the millennial piece, and there's a lot of research out there, but I think I attended a program a year or two ago. Some of that research is kind of flawed because we're less different than I think we've all been led to believe. So guys like me with gray hair and my kids and their generation, what happened, a lot of that research was based on, they asked these kids at 22, right, how they feel about work and these things, and then they asked us. But they didn't ask us when we were 22. If they asked us when we were 22, we'd look a lot similar, more similar. I still think there's some differences in there, for sure. And part of that is, you know, I can only talk about the environment I'm in here, but I think some, you know, I'm a parent, and I think we've raised a bit of an entitlement generation as a whole. That was one of the key things my wife and I strive to not do, and it's tough to do that in Boulder County. There's a lot of affluence. And you know, I don't think that's a good trait for anybody. You know, going back, I've had experience on the corporate side as well, where this has been quite a few years ago, where, you know, I got a young hotshot Java coder, you know, with 3 years experience, a dozen years ago, making 100 grand, who's giving my HR rep a hard time because he got a cold. And he got a cold because she let the fridge run out of orange juice. And it's like, that's not so much millennial and age, that's just like, that's just wrong, okay? For anybody any age, you know, or to bitch about the pizza, you know, we never have the right kind. So I think part of that is don't hire those people, right? Because you'll never be happy, and they'll never be happy. You know, I do think, and I don't know that I have the answer, AJ, around, you know, what do we do with this new workforce that's been, we've conditioned them to not stick around because we've done, you know, people were loyal, right? And then they got cut anyway because, not just because of bad times, because of success. We've been very successful as an organization. We just did, you know, 2 acquisitions, and we have redundancies, and we don't need all of you now. So somebody can work their butt off and help you be successful, and they still lose a job. So we've taught them that. That's not on them, right? It's just the way the world is right now, and it's the new reality. And couple that with, I think, some generational changes around, I want to be learning all the time. I want constant feedback, you know, all the time. And I want to get ahead. And I haven't been promoted in 12 months. You know, 6 months too long. What's going on? So that's you know, a little tongue-in-cheek, but there's, you know, some of that going around. So I think as organizations, we got to do a better job of trying to address that and set expectations. You're probably not going to be promoted every 6 months, right? Unless you're a real superstar. It's just not, you know, reality. But I want to help you succeed. I want to help mentor you. I want to make sure you know how what you're doing every day connects to our overall, you know, objective as an organization, and how your job helps your department and helps our company. And in smaller companies, you know, it's a lot easier line of sight. But we all want that. That's not a generational thing so much.
Yeah.
How does what I do every day help move the ball forward? And please measure me, right? And we don't maybe like the annual review process, but please give me something to shoot for. You know, and don't move it all around, right? And then tell me how I did, and tell me how I can do better, because I want that feedback, and I want that input.
What about Google's like OKR type strategy where the employee does a lot of the figuring out what their goals will be, and then kind of gets a management approval. But
Yeah, I'm not, overly familiar with that, and I think we're in a startup grind environment here that, in large organizations, there's a lot more room sometimes for career pathing, and it's sort of defined, and, the average person spends 18 months in this role, and they can move to the next role. That's kind of all bets are off in startup environments, We normally say, hey, do good stuff and good things will happen, because I can't really,
what's going to happen.
because I don't know, I can't really predict it, and so you kind of have to bring people on that are okay with that level of ambiguity, because we can't, we can't, what if people who've gone before me ended up, well, you're the first one, I don't know, you're the first one in. So, I think again, it's the match of trying to find people that align with that and aren't afraid of that ambiguity and constant change, and some people thrive in it, some people don't. So again, trying to find people that fit. Yes.
I've loved your talk. I really align with so much of what you talked about. One thing I was curious about when, it's always important to really hire the right people from the start, that you go into companies that have already started in general.
Yeah.
What are some creative ways you've addressed the contagiousness of negativity? So team overall was really doing well, enthusiastic, and there's maybe one or two people that the company is reluctant to let go of and hasn't been able to find other ways to address it, where they're just negative, really bringing people down. Maybe they have a skill set that the company feels can't be replaced. Maybe they're well liked.
Yeah. So I think I said earlier, I'm a business guy first and an HR person second. I think a lot of people don't understand what good HR looks like. And so when you have people that aren't helping the organization, then they can't be there, right? If you can't, and particularly in a smaller organization, when you have high-priced people that are bringing everybody backwards, or they're just not contributing, I think we have to be fair to people and try to figure out because the last place you look and blame is the person. You know what you're supposed to do. Are you getting the kind of direction? Do you have the tools? Do you know what needs to be done? And if you exhaust those things, and if it's the individual, then you have to give them a chance to perform. But I'm not a big believer in hanging on to people too long. And some organizations have that problem. It's not fun stuff, but you have to do that. I kind of think of it as we're all in this boat together rowing, and we're in the storm here, and sometimes a couple of people got to be thrown out to save the entire thing. And I don't say that casually, because I think a lot of organizations, I can't tell you how many times in my roles that the manager will come up and say, we need to get rid of Bill. Okay, well, tell me about it. What kind of conversations have you had? Oh, I've talked to him a lot. He's just not cutting it, and I just want him out of it. You talked to Bill, and he told me one time in the hall, that he wasn't happy or something, but I didn't think it was other than that. So a lot of times it can be as simple as just making sure there's clear objectives and measurement. But when that doesn't work, then you can't succeed if you don't have a good team, right? Tony's a big football fan, and professional sports are great examples, and they're ruthless about it if you can't perform. And, I think it doesn't have to be quite so ruthless inside an organization. I'm not a big believer, in the culling the top 10% every year, because then you just create fear and anxiety, I think. But
It's more when their performance is great, they're delivering. It's the negativity that's slipping through.
So there's just a lot of broken glass then, right? And their performance could be great on this job, but their overall performance is not moving the organization forward, and that's what you have to look at. And a lot of us have seen that a lot, right? If somebody's really good at what they do,
And they know they're good at what they do.
I was going to give an example, but we're being recorded, so I'm not going to do that. And I started early in my career as a career consultant, and I've worked with a lot of people who have been fired or laid off through some reason. And it used to really bother me and keep me up at night, because there's this poor person that just lost a job, they've got 3 kids, you know, they're in tears, they lose all their confidence, it's ugly, nasty stuff, and, you know, keep me up at night until after doing this for a number of years that, you know, 6 months later, that person was not happy. They knew they weren't performing very well. It wasn't a great fit. It wasn't a great environment, culture for them. They never would have left because they're on the treadmill and it was good enough. And 6 months later, in many cases, I am so glad that happened to me, you know, because I'm so much happier. That's what let me sleep, then it lets me sleep in organizations when we have to do restructurings and that kind of stuff. Because I know that, you know, people eventually are, in most cases, are going to end up in a better place for them. That's good.
Yes?
Kind of along the lines of what you were saying, what is not a dysfunctional individual, what are other dysfunctional teams? It's kind of hard to pick out.
Dysfunctional team, okay, you're all gone.
Run.
Yeah, exactly. We're all busy over here and then
and
you're
I say that. You know, if you're healthy in a dysfunctional family, you know, you need to find another family. You try. You know, I would say try to make it better. You know, give it the old college try. And sometimes you can make change, and impact change that way. But if you're bucking just too much, and there are some dysfunctional families or some dysfunctional organizations, and some dysfunctional organizations can be successful in spite of themselves. Right? I mean, I wish I could say if you don't get the healthy organizational stuff right, you'll never be successful. I think the odds are much greater you'll be successful, but I've seen organizations that have such a great idea, they're so early into the market, they hide a lot of sins. But it doesn't feel very good to work there. You know, so unless you got a bunch of stock and you're counting your time, you know, I might go find something else.
Very good. Well, appreciate you being here.
My pleasure.
It's been fun.
It has been fun.
Hope you enjoyed yourself.
Absolutely.
And we're going to be around for a little while longer, so if you have any other questions for Brent, let him know.
Thank you.
And do the thing on Monday, so I will send it out to everybody as well.
Yeah, it should be a good program.
All right.
There's still room.
Excellent.
Thanks.
Thank you so much, man. Appreciate it.